But for those of you who don't know me, I am Jason Pye. I'm the Vice President of the Due Process Institute. In case we didn't get to talk beforehand, I am wearing today my Signers of the Declaration of Independence tie because the King was here yesterday. And yeah, this is my way of giving the middle finger to the monarchy because I wasn't actually able to do it yesterday. So I was supposed to elicit more of a laugh, but before I open up with a couple of remarks, I want to introduce our panelists. So to my right here, we have Patrick Purtill. He's the Executive Vice President and General Counsel of Unified.us. Patrick, thanks for being here. To his right, we have Reginald Darby, who is the Federal Legislative Director for the Clean Slate Initiative. Then to his right, we have Gibson, who's the Executive Director of JPMorganChase PolicyCenter. Thank you guys for participating in our last panelist who will be here shortly is Marcus Bullock. He is the CEO of Flikshop and an impacted person. So let me go into why we're talking about Clean Slate, the Fresh Start Act, and other second chance legislation. There are two trends occurring in the United States that few lawmakers are taking seriously. If there are any staff in this room, and we've met before, you have undoubtedly heard me talk about this. American businesses need workers, and Congress isn't doing enough to pay the path for opportunity for people who have a criminal record. The first trend that lawmakers are ignoring is the number of job openings in the economy compared to the number of unemployed persons. From January 2018 through August 2025, the United States saw a surplus of job openings in 75 out of 92 months. From January 2018 through February of 2020, there were an average of 1 million more job openings than unemployed persons. From January 2023, more recent, through February 2025, there were 1.996, almost 2 million more job openings than unemployed persons. Now, you may say, well, the context behind those numbers is, the recovery from the pandemic, the January 2023 to February 2025. Well, beginning in January 2024 and running through February 2025, there were almost 1 million more job openings than workers to fill. We have a shortage of workers. It's also clear that we have a looming population crisis driven by the fact that our society is growing older and going into retirement. According to a publication from the Congressional Budget Office released in September, the native-born population of the United States will have more deaths than births in 2031, about 5 years from now. That's a revised version of a report released in January of the same year. This is last January. The previous report showed more deaths than births in 2033, so we had a 2-year revision in that, closer, because the CBO attributed population shift because of lower net immigration and still declining fertility rates. An aging and shrinking native-born population combined with a persistent labor shortage means the United States can no longer afford to sideline millions of employable people because they have a criminal record. And failing to maximize the workforce will compound every existing weakness in the American economy. A shrinking labor pool means slower economic growth, weaker tax revenue, higher per capita costs for mandatory programs, what some would call entitlement programs, that depend on a growing base of workers. The CBO already projects that the federal debt will reach 118% of gross domestic product by 2035 if current trends continue. And that's primarily driven by mandatory spending and net interest. Without a sufficient number of working age adults, productivity and output will stagnate while obligations rise. The result of this is as much a societal problem, if not more of a societal problem, as it is a fiscal one. When businesses can't find the workers they need, innovation slows, consumer prices rise, and the ladder of upward mobility collapses. The economy cannot function efficiently when millions who are willing and able to work are prevented from doing so because of a policy choice, because we're not providing them with the avenue to clear or to seal their records. And we're going to approach this from both the federal side today as well as the state side. So, I'm going to go my first couple questions to the panel as a whole, and then I have a couple individual questions I want to ask. But We're talking about workforce constraints, population trends, and public safety, but also now a system that keeps millions of people on the sidelines. Why does this issue matter right now? I want to start with Nan first.
Oh, sorry. Hi, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I mean, I think for this reason, this issue matters now for all the reasons that you just articulated, Jason. When 1 in 3 working age adults has a criminal record, that means all of us know somebody, probably, who could use a second chance. It's a family member, it's a friend, it's somebody in your community, and this is an issue that's holding back a lot of economic opportunity for individuals. So the way we think about it is this is a waiting workforce. This is a pool of talented individuals who have barriers to employment, housing, and education due to these old records. And so we have supported, JPMorganChase has supported second chance hiring for a long time. We banned the box at our firm in 2018 and have been intentional about making sure that people with records are part of our inclusive hiring strategy. This in a very complex regulatory environment, as you could well imagine. We can get into, I think, more later. But this is a talent solution for us. This is a waiting workforce. We hire we have a presence in 48 states. We're always looking for the best talent everywhere we operate. And we have found that these are employees, and I think the data like SHRM bears this out, that these are folks who are committed to the job, and they perform as well or better than everybody else, and the turnover is lower, which obviously there's a cost to turnover for employers, and so. This is why we think it's important, as a talent solution. But it's also, as my boss, Jamie Dimon, would say, it's the right thing to do, and it's good for the economy. So I think, to the extent that we can, continue to reduce barriers to employment for individuals with records, we're going to open up a great deal more economic opportunity. Just briefly, since 2018, when we banned the box, that means that we don't ask about a person's background until a conditional offer of employment has been made, and that means that we already know that that person has the talent that we need to do the job. We just need to make sure that they'll fit with our regulatory environment. And so over this time, we've hired about 23,000 people with records that had no bearing on the job that they were being hired to do. So I think that gives you an idea of when businesses put their minds to it and they think through what are the practices and policies that they need to have in hand, at least on the ground, that there's a lot that companies can do, but public policy is also a really important part of that, which we'll get into a little bit later as this goes on.
Thank you, Dan. Reginald?
Before I say anything, can you guys hear me? Alrighty. Just welcome Marcus to the table.
Thank you so much.
Well, as Jason already shared.
With Marcus Bullock, who CEO of Flikshop and Impact Person.
So as Jason already shared, I'm with the Clean Slate Initiative, serves as their federal legislative director. I also like to say I'm a recovering Hill staffer, so a lot of folks in here. I spent almost 15 years on the Hill, most recently with Congress Governor Studi as his deputy chief OD. But Nan mentioned at the top of her remarks that 1 in 3 individuals have some form of a record. And that's how Clean Slate looks at it, because that's the importance of it all. That's anywhere between 70 to 100 million individuals. If I was to, just do a polling at the table here, I can only speak for myself. And before Marcus was there were 3 of us, and I was one of those 3 who have had a record. But luckily, I had mine expunged at the age of 18. And if I did not have that experience or have the ability to have that expunged, I would not have been able to gain access to college because we know over 70% of colleges and universities do background checks. I would not be able to get a job, well, except for Clean Slate because we hire individuals who are directly impacted. But in general, I would not have been able to be a congressional staffer because over 90% of employers do background checks. And I probably would not have been able to find an apartment or get a house because it's very hard for you to get a loan if you want to get a home, if you have a record, or it's also even harder for you to even get a job because of those background checks and the landlords that do background checks as well. I say all that because that is the call to action for us all right now. We know that there is a large population of folks who can increase our workforce, but unfortunately we can't do that because as soon as we see that they have a record, they're automatically disqualified. And now with the increase of AI technology, if you put forward an application and on there it asks if you have a record or if they do a background check on you automatically, then you're automatically kicked out of even being considered. So we have to take into consideration that these populations do deserve a closer look and also the ability to have access to these areas. One research that was out there, one study that was out there done in the state of Michigan showed that 22% of individuals who've had their record sealed in Michigan saw increases in their wages. So if you're making more money, is it a likelihood that you're going to either recommit a crime or commit a new crime? The likelihood of that is very low. Matter of fact, studies show that individuals who've had their records sealed are less likely to commit a new crime than someone who's never committed a crime before committing a new crime themselves. So I think this is the time in which we have to step up and say, hey, we have a population that's dwindling. We have a population who's able to work, that's ready to work. But what can we do to make sure that we provide that platform and those opportunities for them as well?
Thank you, Reginald. Marcus, we are on the first question. It's why does this issue matter right now?
What's up, you guys? How's everybody doing this morning? Afternoon now.
That's what we needed.
Super excited to be able to be here this afternoon. I promise you, even though I was running a few minutes late, I'm about to have the time of my life. So sorry guys, because I'm about to have fun. And also, I'm hoping that what I choose to set out to accomplish here today is hoping that I get an opportunity to be able to meet the person. Now, I don't know who the person in the room is, but there's the person in the room. And this is where we're going to advance the conversation. A lot of people think that a lot of the policy and legislative changes happen in rooms like these, but the honest reality is that they happen over muffins down the street or at Starbucks. And if I'm honest, if I'm helping to create conversations with the person, then we'll be able to move the needle. Now, this conversation is really important to me because, as the team said, as the panel said when I walked in, I am justice impacted. I went to prison when I was a 15-year-old kid for carjacking a man in a shopping mall parking lot at Springfield Mall. During my sophomore year of high school, making that horrible decision landed me in handcuffs the very next day, right outside of Pentagon City, and I ended up getting sentenced by a judge to 8 years in adult maximum security prisons as a result of that crime. I grew up in prison, spending all of those teenage years and early 20s growing up in some of the worst prisons throughout the state of Virginia. And while I knew that I was going to collapse and probably going to die inside of those prison cells because I grew up during an era when DC had a big beef with Richmond, Virginia. And growing up in prison as a youngin', you don't want to be caught in Virginia being from DC. The people told me that, when I walked in around the prison rec yards, I knew that I had to walk around with the jacket on, with the magazines layered between my jacket, just to mitigate me getting stabbed up when I walked through the breezeway. As a teenager, this is not how I envisioned growing up. And in fact, I became very hopeless and I became depressed. I thought I was going to die there and that was going to be it. My mom saw this and she swept in and she made a promise to me in a prison visiting room. She came and visited me and said, Marcus, I don't like this attitude, this Marcus that you're becoming, and I refuse to believe that you're going to come susceptible to this prison culture that you're living in. And so I want to make a promise to you to write you a letter or send you a picture every day for the remaining 6 years of your prison sentence because I want you to know that there's love waiting on the outside of those cells. My mom kept me connected in a way that I never dreamt would allow for me to be able to have the future that I have today back then. But when she was writing me those letters, this was, during an era where there's no social media and there's no easy emailing and these technologies that you and I use to communicate every day. And so the vast majority of people, the hundreds, thousands on my rec yard, didn't have that kind of access to their family members when they were there. And then as you continue to grow, 5 years turns into 10, and 10 turns into 15 really, really swiftly, and now you're just a distant memory to the most of the people. Now, interestingly enough, because my mom was sending me these letters and these photos, I was the person that was bringing the new content inside of the prison rec yard. I would be on the yard, and it was crazy because I tell people my mom was Instagram before there was an Instagram. She was taking pictures of food well before it was cool to take pictures of food. My mom would sit at her desk, and she would literally be eating lunch and say, I want to take a picture with one of these one-time used Kodak cameras that she would buy from Walgreens. And then she would write a 4-page letter. Marcus, you're going to enjoy your fat, juicy burger like this when you come home. She would walk through the shopping mall, click, click, walk through the department stores, and write me a 4-page letter. Marcus, look at this sofa in this department store. You're going to enjoy your pillow top mattress one day when you get home. She kept me connected in such a powerful way that even though I didn't understand that she was helping to kind of sort of breed and seed a level of hope and even audacity for when I came home, I knew that when I came home, the only thing that I had to do was to be able to prove that my mother's investment into me during that time was not in vain. And the only way to be able to do that was to go out and go try to find a job. And try to find a job as a person with a felony conviction at 23 years old, just spent almost the last decade not even been able to explain where I've been, honestly. I'm going out to go try to find one. And this is during the era before I banned the box. So every job application had that looming question on number 7 or 13, have you been convicted of a felony? Now, I had to answer honestly, yeah, because I knew that when the background check would come in, I would have to face it. So I wouldn't want to lie. And I also thought that I would be able to figure out a way to justify or kind of sort of explain, or even if nothing else, try to figure out how to articulate the value add that I would bring to one of these companies. Because working in the retail space, I promise you, I sell more Jordans than anybody in the store. They all told me no. Michael Jackson, Beat It, Kick Rocks, Scram. Bro, did you know that you had a carjacking on your record when you applied for this job? Yes, I knew I had a carjacking. I was dead when I committed it. And it was interesting because the same Marcus that appears here today as the CEO of one of the most impactful apps inside of the App Store got declined over and over and over and over again because of that one felony conviction. And now I spend the vast majority of my time as a CEO trying to figure out how to get in front of some of my tech bro friends and be like, yo, how are we being thoughtful about creating access? Because I promise you there will be no one else that would have sold more Jordans than me. And the more and more that we lock these opportunities away from me and my friends that are coming behind me, these companies are losing opportunity to be able to pad their bottom line with numbers that are going to be very, very, very unforgiving when they leave and they go start their own businesses. I'm grateful for my opportunity to be able to contribute to conversations like this because my past defines the reason why this is important to me.
I'm going to start thinking of the Hill with me.
I'm already ahead of you.
Yeah, because that was awesome. Patrick, I feel so sorry that you
Literally.
But same question.
I'm literally just going to say that following Marcus is simply not fair.
Yeah.
So this is the part of the program where we get boring. But I don't want to go over the exact same ground here on the employment piece. I'll just add 2 things real quickly. One of the things, we've heard, I think Nan and Reginald mentioned that 1 in 3 Americans have a criminal record. I worked at DOJ in the Bush administration in the Deputy Attorney General's office, and I did not realize this at the time. Criminal record can mean simply an arrest. Doesn't even mean you were ever convicted of a crime. Criminal record means you were arrested and acquitted of the crime, and you still have to declare that you were arrested in a lot of settings. So it's broader than I realized at one time. So I think that's an important thing to remember. And the only other thing that I would say is, in terms of employment, we do know that the single greatest factor in reducing recidivism is employment on the back end, which is why these policies are so important. And it's even harder because that first job coming out, as Marcus said, is enormously difficult to land. And with Clean Slate, we're actually talking about people, generally speaking, who've already landed that job because they remained crime-free after serving the entirety of their sentence and the entirety of their period of supervision after their sentence, remained crime-free, remained employed, and what we're just saying is, at a certain point, you're a different person than that person. And we know you're a different person because you've proved it already. You've proved it by your actions.
It's an accountability. You have to earn Clean Slate. So keep in mind, we're talking about two pieces of legislation here that have been introduced in Congress, on the House side and on the Senate side. I don't remember the bill number for the Senate side. I hate to say Reginald probably has that written down. But on the House side, the Clean Slate Act is H.R. 3114. The Fresh Start Act is H.R. 3111. Reginald can give us the Senate bill numbers if he has them written down. But let's start with the basics, Reginald. What does the Clean Slate Act and Fresh Start Act, what do they actually do? And what problem are they trying to solve at the federal level?
Gotcha. So you should have a one-pager in front of you that has a breakdown of both bills. And the HR and the Senate bill numbers should be on there as well. Just so you know, the champions of each of these bills in the House is Lucy McBeth and Congressman Nathaniel Moran for the Clean Slate Act. And for the Fresh Start Act is Congresswoman Cindy Comlager-Dove and Congresswoman Laura Lee. And then over Senate side, the Fresh Start Act lead is Senator Chris Van Hollen. We're still looking for a Republican lead there. But the Clean Slate Act is Lisa Blunt-Rochester and Senator Rand Paul. But ultimately, we have already passed Clean Slate bills in 13 different states and DC. But there is not a federal mechanism for record sealing, so that's the need for this. And ultimately what we do is we automatically seal the records for individuals who have arrest but no conviction, similar to what Patrick just shared. And then also for low-level marijuana charges as well. And then for anything else that falls under that umbrella can be petitioned to the court. So basically, you can go through the U.S. Attorney's Office at the federal level and petition the court to have your record sealed, as long as it fits within the certain parameters as a non-violent crime. And then on top of that, in this bill, we want to make sure that employers had full protection. So there's a liability protection. So if you hire someone with a record and when you did their background check, that record did not come up, and let's say they commit a crime, which is not likely on your premises or while doing your work, that company is not held liable. Also, law enforcement will always have access to these records, even after the record is sealed. Law enforcement goes beyond just the police officers, the detectives, or anything, or FBI who are doing the investigation, but also the courts, the U.S. Attorney's Office. They will also have those records. And then I'll also share that we want to make sure that not only were the courts continue to have access to those records, but if they were to have a new investigation come up, they will be able to go back to those records and utilize that as they go forward in any investigation from that point on. One thing that this bill does not do, and you'll also see this on your one-pager, sex offenders are not eligible for record sealing. If you have been convicted of any sort of crime against the United States, like treason or terrorism or anything done with national security, you're not eligible for your record to be sealed. And then also the last part here is if you are a petitioner and you've been convicted of other violent crimes, you're not eligible for your record to be sealed as well. So I just want to make sure people are very clear that we are not an erasure. This is not an expungement like I had when I was 18 in the state of Texas. This is a complete seal, which means the record is still there. It's just not available for public consumption.
And just one point of clarification.
Yeah.
There is currently no petition process for federal, records at this point. So arguably, it's one of the most important things that legislation creates is a petition process if you want to have a record sealed, which most states have, either an expungement or, I think
all but 4 states have.
have either a sealing or expungement. So, I think that's just a really important factor of that bill as well.
Well, then, since I have you, we're talking about labor shortages on one hand and millions of sideline workers on the other. Why hasn't policy caught up to that reality?
I mean, I think it's starting to catch up for a lot of the reasons that Reginald talked about. the 13 states in the District of Columbia have passed it. I've worked on 9 of those 13 bills. Thank you. And I think that, it's a very bipartisan issue. There's red states, blue states that have passed these bills. And I think that there's just a growing recognition of all of the, for lack of a better word, friction in the labor market that having, and in housing and education, that individuals having these records is creating for them. And it's holding back their ability to have greater economic prosperity. So I think there is a growing recognition that this is something that we need to take a closer look at. If I would, the importance of, I talked a little bit about the importance of employer practices, but the reason that we work on public policy is because that's how we know we can create change at scale. And one of a piece of legislation that we worked on that passed in 2022 is the Fair Hiring and Banking Act. And so the Fair Hiring and Banking Act, really updated and modernized some of the hiring rules in the financial services industry. We explained to our regulators and explained to lawmakers how the rules were written in such a way that it was just, screening out way too many people who would not create risk to safety and soundness in the system. We want everybody's money to be safe, for sure. But too many people were being screened out for things that wouldn't have an impact on the jobs that they were doing. And an important feature of the Fair Hiring and Banking Act is that that companies or financial institutions are allowed to set aside records that have either been sealed or expunged. So these state laws work in concert with the federal rules that we have for hiring in our industry. And that would also be the case with the federal Clean Slate legislation. So it would create sort of this symbiotic relationship where when states decide which, offenses are eligible to be, cleared or sealed, then, it frees up institutions in the financial sector to be able to set those aside. Again, assuming they're not related to, things that might create risk in the financial system, which usually they're not at this level. So I think there's just a growing recognition that, many of these laws, I think the FDIC hiring rules hadn't been updated in 50 years. So, or roughly speaking, don't quote me on that. Somebody's gonna go look it up and tell me it was 40 or something. But I think that there are many other industries that we could be taking a closer look at to see when's the last time those hiring rules were updated. Our firm just launched a security and resiliency initiative that's looking at what are some of the industries that are critical to our national security and to our national resiliency and our supply chain, and are there updates that could be made to hiring rules in a broader set of issues that would work in concert with like clean slate laws.
Reginald, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just real quick. We have a couple of our partners in this room, and we keep talking about the states in which we have passed clean slate, but we have not named any of those states. So if you're a partner or anyone who's worked on any of these states, I'm going to list them out just real quick. Just raise your hand real quick. So I want everyone to see the sort of coalition we have present. Pennsylvania.
I was not at Due Process Institute, but I was at Freedom Works at the time, but I worked on that.
Utah. New Jersey. Michigan. Connecticut. Delaware. Virginia. Oklahoma. Colorado. California. Minnesota. New York. DC. And Illinois. There we go. Okay, I just want to make sure everyone knew that we've done a lot of work and we have a lot of partners here who have also done the work.
So Marcus is now my cleanup hitter, but before I go to Marcus, I want to ask Patrick, there's often a tension in how people think about this. Public safety versus opportunity. Is that actually a trade-off, or is that the wrong way to frame this?
No, I actually don't think there is a trade-off there. To be honest with you, our involvement in this got involved with it much more from the public safety aspect than from the employment aspect. And I think it's important to remember, anybody in here who's an attorney will remember their 1L criminal law class. Traditionally, there have been three purposes for criminal law, and it's deterrence, there's a punitive element, and then there's the rehabilitative piece. And it's the rehabilitative piece that gets dropped oftentimes, but it has the biggest, arguably, if not the biggest, at least a co-equal share in the public safety argument as the deterrence and the punitive side. So for us, that's where I think the public safety piece comes in, because 96% of people who are in prison, whether state or federal, are coming back into our communities at some point. So the question is, how do we want them to come back? So there's been a lot of work on prison programming and all of those things, which are very important. But as I said, employment, I would say employment and housing on the back end, when people are re-entering back in, that's what's going to make or break whether or not they recidivate. And we have to remember that recidivation is a huge driver of incarceration. A lot of, and we are not, and at the federal level, we're particularly bad at it. We have a very high recidivism rate. And that's where you can really get a big, frankly, bang for your buck on the public safety side. And every time someone recidivates, it's a new victim, it's a new court case eating up court resources, it eats up a bunch of dollars on the incarceration side. So it's really a place where you can make a difference. And what I like about the Clean Slate is, for me, it's an easy lift, so to speak, because these are folks who have already proven that they've done everything that we've asked them to do. They've served their period of incarceration, they've served their period of supervision, they've remained employed, they've been crime-free. It's just, and Reginald, I think, hit this where he said that, once you're able to seal your record, once again, not from law enforcement, just generally from the public, your wages increase by, at least a quarter, and that is a huge deal, because that means that people can get a better apartment, which means they can be in a better neighborhood, their kids can go to better schools. It starts to, and it enables them to put, like Marcus, what you did, you're able to put it in the background. You know what I mean? Yes, we did it, but that's not who I am. It shouldn't define somebody forever, and that's where I think the public safety piece really comes in.
So Patrick mentioned recidivism, and for those of you who may not be familiar with that term, that is the rate of, at the federal level, it's the rate of rearrest. So BOP says their recidivism rate is approximately 43%. That's high. Under the First Step Act, the recidivism rate, from what we've seen, based on the data that's been made available or made public, it's 9.7%. So that's a huge difference, and it shows the success of First Step, which advocates like myself, Patrick, David Sadafian, Shanna, and JC, we all worked on that, and we're proud to see it, and Sarita also, proud to see it pass and become law. But we have a lot more here to do, and the best recidivism reduction program that's available is a good job. And I'll also note that the University of Michigan School of Law paper that both Reginald and Reginald's mentioned and Patrick sort of alluded to, the recidivism rate amongst individuals who received expungement is lower than the general population. That's a huge, huge, huge boon to us.
Just real quick, I know Patrick stated that employment and housing is probably the two bigger things right now that leads to a reduction or an increase in public safety when it comes to Clean Slate and the benefits to it. I would say education is just as important, because when you think about the different trades that are out there, if someone wants to become a plumber, for them to be able to go to those trade schools, that school's probably going to do a background check. If you want to get your license to become a beautician, you're going to have to go through the licensure, and they're going to definitely do a background check there. So to make sure that we are gaining access or providing access for these individuals to get the employment, we have to make sure that the educational piece is also taken care of.
So I have two.
Can I add one really quick point on the public safety? So our Second Chance Business Coalition just had its annual convening, and we had 3 state attorneys general come and speak, Pennsylvania, Delaware, DC, and because they wanted to drive home the message that second chance hiring and clean slate laws enhance public safety. And I think it was a few years ago that there was a bipartisan letter from roughly a dozen or maybe 15 state attorneys general at the time, who also supported the Fresh Start Act. And for those of you who don't know what the Fresh Start Act is, that would actually create a grant system through DOJ money so that states could implement clean slate legislation at the state level. So these are the chief law enforcement officers of the states telling us this enhances public safety in our communities, and I think we should listen to them.
Yeah, I have two more questions. I want to be able to take some questions from our audience. First to you, Marcus. Let's say you're a staffer in the audience here, you're taking this information back to your boss, your chief of staff, your LD. Who are the people that we're talking about in their district who are being held back? People like you, people like Reginald, and so on.
Yeah. So I mean, I look in confusion, in confusion just now. I was looking just because I have no idea what you guys do. I have no idea what the staffers do. I'm not even going to act like I know what you guys do. If I had enough time, I would probably use ChatGPT real fast and try to figure out how to be able to build a really good response to that. But so what I will tell you is that I'm one singular data point that I'm hoping again that you're able to take back and erect a different kind of conversation over lunch or over dinner tonight. And the reason why, I think that that's important for me to be able to talk about this singular data point that I want you to be able to point to is because one or two of y'all might follow me on social, and I want you to be able to share my content with your friends when you talk about who it is that I am. But let me give you kind of sort of an idea of why that's important to me, who I am, and why I rumble the way I rumble. You see, the interesting thing is when I got declined for all of those jobs as a result of having to check that box and say I had a felony conviction, I finally did land on one that did shift things for me. And this was interesting because it didn't come as a result of a policy change or anything. See, we all know, yes, man, these are archaic laws that, if I'm being honest, maybe I'm biased, but they just don't make sense any longer. I'm like, what are we talking about here? But I'll oblige, let's jump in. See, the one company that did give me an opportunity, they asked the same exact question on their application. Have you been convicted of a felony? But this time they asked, have you been convicted of a felony, comma, within the last 7 years? That comma changed everything because I had just served an 8-year prison sentence. So I was able to answer honestly, no, I have not been convicted of a felony within the last 7 years. And the interesting thing was that one comma completely changed everything. It was at a paint store uptown on 15th and Peachtree. It's not there anymore. So if you drive in there now, it's condos. It's the whole thing. While they bought the Whole Foods from goes around. But they moved the paint store that was owned by Duron up the street, and we moved all those big cans of paint up the hill to 14th and Clifton. Now that store was later on acquired by Sherwin-Williams. It's across the street from a Boys and Girls Club. Now that paint store, they gave me a job, and I was the guy who was responsible for mixing paint. And the only reason I got that job is that because of that comment. So no one knew that I actually had a felony conviction when I was working there. Now, I was probably making somewhere around $9 to $10 an hour. It was a little bit higher than minimum wage at the time, but I promise you, there was no one that was more excited than me to sell paint. In fact, every day I was running to the paint store to go be able to sell paint. And so the customers would see it, because the interesting thing about giving someone an opportunity, it doesn't just impact them in the moment and giving them that shot. What happens is you create an ecosystem that they rely on as a result of them having the reliance that we all have on the roles that we do that give us purpose in our life. Typically, that means our jobs. So now, as a result of me being happy and excited that somebody gave me a shot and they didn't know that my inmate number used to be 247384, I'm walking to the paint store and they like, oh my gosh, dude, you are so happy to sell paint. How much do you charge, in fact, to be able to paint my kitchen? And I'm like, well, Miss Johnson, we don't paint kitchens here. I'm about to say this midnight blue, so you paint your own kitchen. The painters will come into the paint store, and they will also, I would hear them complaining about this housing crisis and this bubble that was getting ready to burst inside the real estate market that would create these massive layoffs, and everyone was fearful about losing their jobs. And I would hear this, and I was baffled because there was so many Miss Johnsons that wanted me to paint their kitchens. A light bulb goes off in my head, and I say, you know what, this is my opportunity. I'm going to start my own first side hustle, and I'm going to be the one that connects the Miss Johnsons to the painters that are looking for extra work. You can midnight work for me, and I tell you what, the market price to pay Miss Johnson's kitchen is $500. If you can paint it for me for $400, I'm gonna keep one, you keep 4, Miss Johnson keeps her kitchen painted, everybody's happy. This works out, and eventually I would realize that so many of these painters would only want to come to my line when my team members were like, hey, I can help you over here. Nah, that's all right, I'll wait for Marcus. Because they knew they were going to wait, they were going to have an opportunity on the other side of that transaction. The homeowners also would commonly come into the paint store and say, no, I'll wait for Marcus as well, because they knew they were going to get their basements painted for the low. And it was interesting what I was creating there, because I was building something, and before I knew it, I was building a contracting company that would allow for me to quit working at that paint store, and I could run that painting business full time. Now, I'm super excited about running that painting business full time, because now I have a very unique opportunity to not only be able to create an awesome brand and narrative that shifts in my family and my entire community, but I'm also able to go from the job seeker to the job giver. And now I won't have those policies in my company. It snowballs, it compounds. And now, and the thing is, after running this painting business, after hiring the first 18 people, I didn't realize it, but the first 16 people had felony convictions just like me. Now that's wild when you run a company with a whole bunch of people with felonies in it, because the water cooler talk is completely different, I promise you. The jokes that we were having, the people who didn't do time, they was like, I don't know what Marcus and them are talking about over there. But the interesting thing is that they were coming to work and had sustainable employment that allowed for them to be able to live their lives, and it all came as a result of the hard work that I was pushing in. And so I finally landed on one project that would change everything. I'm building this thing up. All of what was behind me is completely gone. I've run this contracting company now that by this time about 4 or 5 years before I get an opportunity that completely changes my life. Someone meets me and says, hey, Marcus, you're running this company and you're doing your thing. Dude, are you MBE certified? And I'm like, yeah, I'm MBE certified. What is MBE certified? It ends up meaning that it's a minority business enterprise allocation, and it allowed for me to be able to bid on state projects that would allow for having larger scale jobs for me in the company. I'm like, oh my gosh, let's get this certification, let's make it happen. We go through the process, get the certifications. We get the MBE certification. I take all this time learning how to read architectural plans, my news languages, RFPs and ITBs and RFQs and all these other fancy acronyms, and I'm super excited about this new life that I'm building for myself, because I'm about to build this project that's going to change everything, and I win the project. You're not going to believe what the project was. It was a project to paint the Baltimore-Washington International Airport. Wow. Now this is a multi-million dollar car. Now mind you, I'm 25 years old. I was just living in cell C12 a few months ago. I couldn't believe that this is my life, and I have this opportunity to even staff up and be able to not only provide opportunities for people, but to be able to show that we can provide world-class service to one of the international airports that I fly out of, and I couldn't believe that I had this opportunity. We go to start the project, and they say, Marcus, it's time for you to go get your badge. I'm like, okay, let's go get my badge. I go get my badge, and I'm going to the security office, and as soon as they take my little thumb and do that little red light of the thumb thing, I'm like, yeah, this ain't going to go well. I've been home for 7 years, and I honestly can't even remember the last time I had to talk about my felony conviction out loud, because I've been building businesses and building clientele and building opportunities for my entire community to be able to participate in. And that one scan changed everything when the red light started blinking. This contract's already signed, and they tell me, Marcus, you can't get a Homeland Security badge because your felony conviction will preclude you from being in secure spaces inside of the airport. Now, the interesting thing is, as the entrepreneur that I am, and most people that are coming out of these sales, I'm telling you, y'all missing out on opportunities to hire some of the most innovative and thoughtful, and I'm talking about the unbelievably deliberate entrepreneurs that you've ever met. Anyway, that was an asterisk. That was parenthetically giving you something that sets you up a little bit over there. Now, the interesting thing was that as a result of that failure, I learned that there was a loophole in the system. I said, hey, you know what? I found something and I excised this loophole. The loophole was I could be escorted as a person that was unbadged by someone that was badged. And if you were badged in the airport, you could escort up to 2 people in one of these secured areas. I ended up having to go hire a person, Paying this man $75,000 a year just to be able to sit at the airport and wait for me to get there so that he can escort me around the secure spaces. Now, the crazy thing about that is that the CEO of the company, who is very capable of not only getting to a point where they can build a company, but getting to a point where they can build a company to win one of the contracts that completely shapes this entire region, and yet an archaic HR policy precluded me from being able to really deliver on the project that they knew that I could deliver on. What are we doing here?
I would have done it for 20.
I might have done it for 25, 30, but yeah. Do we have any questions from go ahead.
So I love the comments about the.
Oh wait, hold on a second. Please tell us your name.
My name is Zach Regami. I love the comments about housing, employment, education, and how those are big barriers. But I think one of the big barriers that gets missed a lot of times is simply the stigma around it. That causes isolation, that causes disconnection, that causes that feeling of, do I have any hope of continuing on? And I listen to Marcus, and it's the thing that jumps out at me is with a carjacking, in a lot of instances, he wouldn't even be eligible for what's being talked about today. But how does legislation like Clean Slate impact the overall stigma towards people that have a conviction, and the notion that even if it's not removed, that we should give them another chance?
Panelists, let's please keep our answers as brief as possible, because I want to get a couple questions in from the audience.
Absolutely. So one thing that we wrote into this bill and is written into all of our bills is the automatic piece. If you are someone with a record, you probably do not want to walk back into a courthouse to petition and have your record sealed, because you don't know if you potentially have another warrant out there that you're not aware of, and when you walk in, you may get arrested. That's not the type of fear that you want to walk with. So that's one reason why we added the automatic piece, just to take the burden off the individual who has the record and placing it back onto the government so that it's efficient and clean and easy. So that's one area I've seen us do it. But also at the Clean Slate Initiative, one thing that we've been doing is a narrative researching project where we are aiming to change how we talk about Clean Slate, how we talk about people with records, so that we are not necessarily bringing back the dignity to these individuals, but make sure everyone understands that we're all human. We all make mistakes, and we should not be judged by that one mistake that we may have made many, many years ago.
Anybody else? Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Michaela. I'm a staffer with the congressional office based out of Florida, but my question is kind of specific to Florida. So for individuals who were Baker active, and it's kind of a constituent inquiry that I'm just translating. So individuals that were Baker active, while that doesn't kind of guarantee that's not tied to an arrest, it can occur like concurrently, and I think this individual was. So my question is, like, do they have to kind of go through these same processes to get that arrest, as you mentioned, off of their record, like front? And how they were just like kind of asking in terms of like employment. So kind of do these legislations also kind of cover that umbrella, if you will?
Who wants to take it?
Sure, I'll take that. It depends on whether it was a state or a federal conviction. So if someone's convicted of a felony under Florida law, then that's where you'd have to deal with the record. The Clean Slate here in Washington would deal with federal convictions. So, theoretically, somebody could have a state conviction and a federal conviction. If this legislation passes, they could get automatic sealing of their federal record, but it wouldn't impact their state record.
Okay.
Yeah, the systems just are run on separate tracks.
Yeah, and to further clarify, I mean, the automatic side is simple drug possession of controlled substance, low-level marijuana crimes. That's the automatic side. The petition side is for everything else, but there are exceptions. Nonviolent, they have to be nonviolent offenses. There's no crimes for terrorism or anything like that. There's a bunch of other stuff too. So it's very specific, but then there's that whole process that comes with it on the petition side. But a simple possession or a federal marijuana crime, yeah, I mean it would, but state level, as Patrick mentioned, is an entirely different system. Just the same way that a presidential pardon doesn't apply to state crimes, it only applies to federal crimes.
And Florida is one of the states that we're looking at for another round of Clean Slate work or campaigning. So that should be coming, I want to say 2028, but I could be wrong, but 2028.
I'll just jump in. One thing to tee up of what you said a second ago about the automated part. Once again, I tend to come at it from the law enforcement side more than anything else. The nice thing about the automatic is that it really preserves court resources as well, because our courts are just, they're perpetually overwhelmed, especially our state courts. So if you can take something that's a relatively routine kind of process, and you know that they're going to get it because they've jumped through every hoop already, just having an algorithm do it saves a lot of court resources. And I just think it's really, and a lot of it is just kind of a modernization project in my mind. We're talking about employment. Everybody who's applying for a job today is run through an algorithm. I mean, that's how you're sorted. The idea that we wouldn't use that technology to reduce the court caseload and to make this process smoother, it seems fairly straightforward to me.
I have time for one more quick question and one quick answer. But if we want to go down the rabbit trail of AI, I'm happy to have that conversation. The stuff they can do. Any other questions? Okay, I have one quick question for the audience, and I'll end it on this, because I know at least a couple of our panelists are people of faith. Why is this important to someone who is a person of faith? Patrick, you first.
I'm Roman Catholic, so everything, that's the lens through which I view the world. And for me, it's pretty simple. It's a long time ago, a guy named St. Augustine, was watching someone taken away to the gallows and looked at him and said, "There, but for the grace of God, go I." This is, and for me, redemption is a core part of my faith belief. It's frankly the thin reed upon which I hang my hope. So it's but it's not. We're all capable of bad things, but it doesn't mean that that's who you are forever. And we, frankly, Reginald, you were saying, the 1 in 3, but there is, I guarantee you, when I was younger, there were things that I just didn't get caught for, so there's, I think that's just a reality of how it is. And I think that the redemptive piece of faith is very strong here. And once again, what we're talking about with Clean Slate is we're talking about earned redemption. This is not a mulligan. This is not a gift. This is just a simple recognition of what people have done with their lives. And us saying, welcome back.
For me, I am a PK. What people don't know, PK is preacher's kid. My mom's an ordained minister. I was a youth minister growing up. And one thing that I learned was that you can always go to God and ask for forgiveness, no matter how many times. For a simple fact, we're not perfect. And I like to think that I'm no greater than God. So why can't I do the same? Why can I forgive someone for a mistake that they've made? And I think if we all had that mindset, and I know a lot of people, especially some of the folks I used to work for, have that mindset. And I just urge folks to lean into it, knowing that you're no greater than anyone else, and we all make mistakes, and everyone deserves that second chance. And especially this month, which is Second Chance Month, we should be looking to that just a little harder.
Yeah, but I just think that, co-sign what you said, but also I think that I just go back to the sheer numbers, right? The 1 in 3 working age adults. It means it's hitting every community, everywhere. Urban, rural, faith-based, veterans. 1 in 3 veterans has a civilian criminal record, typically related to their service. So, it touches every corner of our communities. And so I think there's, and again, as Patrick said, this is earned redemption. These are folks who have fulfilled their justice system obligations and just want the ability to, have what everybody else has, basically. So I think that that's the power in that we can all recognize, is that it levels the playing field for, those who have done the hard work of, putting their lives back on track. we shouldn't stand in their way. They should be able to get good jobs at good wages with career pathways and not be stuck in low-wage jobs or unemployed or underemployed, in perpetuity. So, I think it touches everything. And to the question about stigma, how we get past that is a much harder question, I think, because as I mentioned, we've hired more than 23,000 people with records. I go out and talk about it. I go and testify about it. And very few, I can count on one hand how many people have been willing to self-identify and say, because people still think that it's going to negatively impact them. So I think we have a lot of work to do in reaching as broad a coalition or as we can, including the faith-based coalition, including veterans, including sports and entertainment, to highlight all the ways in which we can unlock greater economic opportunity and freedom for people.
You mentioned veterans before I go to you, Marcus. You mentioned veterans, and I can envision doing another one of these in November, which is a designated month for veterans, and trying to get Secretary Collins here, who was the lead sponsor of the First Step Act in the House in 2018. Getting him here to talk about the importance of record sealing expungement for veterans and how given the things they were exposed to. I grew up with a father who served in Vietnam who had PTSD. He didn't commit crimes, but it deeply impacted him. So, Marcus, you're hitting cleanup. Before Marcus clears us all out.
Where's the collection plate?
Give our panelists a round of applause. And then Marcus, say something.
Yeah, I'll save this so we can have some time. Maybe I'll catch the one after this. So I will be a bit more brief in my response on this one. I'm a preacher's kid as well. I grew up in a church, and I remember my mom talking about the power of Christ and how Christ never really had moments where he talked about sympathizing for the people that he was on a path to either go teach or to transform. He never leaned into sympathy. He typically would lean into empathy. See, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is when you feel for someone. And empathy is when you feel with someone. The more times that we have an opportunity to be able to practice empathy in our own lives, we'll be able to see our community not only reshape itself to become better, stronger, more vibrant, but it'll be filled with dope people like me that are coming out of your cells.
Thank you, folks.